Okay, I'm back with another quick video. I don't really have a script or list of bullet points or anything for this one. It's just something I want to talk about real quick. So, real quick, something I want to share about myself. I have a rule when it comes to TV shows, and that is I give any show 4 episodes before I decide to keep watching or stop watching it. And the main reason why is that, well, there's two main reasons. One, usually a pilot, or in some cases the first 2 episodes, if they're a two-parter, might be filmed in advance of the rest of the series being picked up, and they may change some things between the pilot and the actual show. And then the other thing is, I feel like with any TV show, unlike a movie where you could sit down and be done with it in 2 or 3 hours, in 4 episodes, you could be, if they're in some cases an hour long, you may need that time to introduce all the main characters, get the story of the show going, allow time to raise stakes for action and drama to emerge, especially if the first episode is a lot of talking and just basic introduction and stuff. So I feel like it's important to give any good show, or any show in general, 4 episodes to decide if it's good or not to be worth watching. And the reason why I bring this up is that earlier this week, The Last of Us on HBO just aired its 4th episode, and I just wanted to give my thoughts real quick about these first 4 episodes as well as the game as a whole. I think I talked about it in a previous video a long time ago about zombies and how I really love the game, but I'm going to focus more on the show as someone who has played the game multiple times, but also wanted to give his thoughts about the show itself. So, with that said, I wanted to say this. I have played The Last of Us 1 at least a dozen times in the last decade since it came out. And it's one of my personal favorite video games of all time. There are many of the people who've done better reviews about the game itself than I can, but I've played it so many times I know pretty much every surprise moment that's going to happen before it happens, where all the collectibles are, even without looking at it online or on maps, so like in the strategy guide. And even after that, I still get emotional when certain characters die or when certain things happen in the games. I've also played Left Behind, as well as Part 2. I enjoy all of The Last of Us lore, even the comic, I've read it a few times. And so, I just wanted to say this. In my opinion, now I've not seen all of them, but in my opinion, I believe, at least what I've seen, The Last of Us is the best video game adaptation ever made, but even not just that, of, say, a book to a movie, or a TV show to a movie, or any type of adaptation I've ever seen. I think this is one of, if not the best, adaptation ever. And I believe this ties back to something I said a long time ago. With the problem with any adaptations, you gotta please 2 audiences, the people who know the original source material and the people who don't. You need to be able to explain things to people who don't know the source material, but at the same time, you don't want to be just copy and paste of the stuff we've seen. You want to give us something new for the people who know the original source material but still be faithful to it. So, I think I made this example comparing to, say, like the Last Airbender movie. It didn't really please either type of audience. Or, say, a remake of a movie from a long time ago. We don't want to, say, the Planet of the Apes movies. They did something different than just copy and paste of the original Planet of the Apes movies. So, adaptations are hard because you need to please both types of audiences. And again, other people have done plenty of videos talking about this. People who've played the games watching the show. People who've never played the game watching the show. But again, I think that this is the best adaptation because of the fact, in the first 4 episodes, basically 80% of what we get in these episodes is what we got in the games. But the remaining 20% is new things, like expanded backstory, character development, as well as new elements that weren't in the games. So it does what it promises. It gives us the Last of Us story, but it changes it up to make it actually worth watching. It's not just copy and paste of the game. Similar to, say, The Walking Dead. Now, I stopped watching Walking Dead, say, I think Season 8. I didn't watch the last few seasons. They kept characters alive that died in the comics, or didn't do certain things from the comics. The Last of Us is doing the same thing, but I think it's even doing better. Now, to be fair, like I said, I stopped watching Walking Dead, and this is only the 4th episode. But I'm making it as the comparison because it's probably the best kind of comparison I can make. Now, another thing I also want to bring up, because I said it is HBO, I was not the biggest Game of Thrones fan, but some of the people who worked on that, as well as the HBO show Chernobyl, which I never saw that one, I only saw the first season of Game of Thrones, though, are working behind it, so hopefully they can continue to give us a really good show. It's already expected to get a 2nd season, which will continue the story and maybe even get into the 2nd game. But from what I've seen so far, I love the show, and I just want to give some quick thoughts on each episode real quick. So, first episode, almost felt like a mini zombie movie, to be honest, in the fact that we got so much from the first couple of levels in basically a little over an hour, almost an hour and a half long episode. I like how we got more to, I guess, the first level. Oh, and by the way, spoilers, but again, this is, I just saying that now because I didn't say it at the beginning of this. We get more of Joel's relation with Sarah and Tommy, her actually kind of seeing like the breadcrumbs laying out, which I'll get back to that in a second, of the apocalypse actually happening. We get more development and a couple of like little hints of things that will come later on, like the veteran bumper sticker on Tommy's car. Getting a little bit more about Joel and Sarah's relationship with their neighbors, were people we never actually saw going into the game. They were just people that turned to zombies and Joel had to kill. And just so much other stuff like that. And one thing I will say, I don't mind if a show or a movie changes, say, a character's race or ethnicity or sexual orientation or even gender. And I don't mind if, say, a game or a story that was set in 1 year or time is set in a more modern time or a different point in time. Because in the game, the apocalypse happens 2013. Here they changed it to 2003, which is an important detail for later. But yeah, so just first episode, first half, expands on the introduction level of the game. Second half, we have the big time skip to 20 years to Boston, to where it's now actually 2023. And we, again, get a little bit more development with, say, Tess and Robert. Now, obviously they made the change of having Robert die early on, rather than be killed by the Fireflies, rather than having Joel and Tess kill him. We get a little bit more development of Marlene and her relation with Ellie that we didn't actually necessarily get in the game. We were just kind of told about it. Although we do get it, I think, in the Last of Us comic, as well as Left Behind. I think there's a mention to it. And there's, like I said, a few more little details built up that come up later in later episodes. So, first episode, amazing. Second episode, again, really good. Kind of continuing the Boston level as well as the next level where they're outside of Boston, traveling to the capital. We do see a few little changes here and there. For example, the point where Ellie's kind of joking around in the hotel, that was a part of the Pittsburgh level, but they changed it to include it here. There is a lot more of the episode being in the day rather than at night, which I'm actually kind of glad. They even give us a few little changes with how the virus spreads with like the vines and the tendrils rather than just the spores. And then, of course, the big thing, the opening introduction is the flashback to 2003 in Indonesia. Oh, wait, was it Indonesia or... no, it was in Malaysia. I forgot which one it was. It was one of the two. I think, yeah, Kuala Lumpur, that's Malaysia, sorry. Where basically it's the flower, and... Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention in episode 1, the flashback that features the guy from the Mummy movies being a scientist in the 60s saying how the virus could actually spread. Because they were very faithful with the science in the game, and they're still trying to be faithful with the science of how the virus would work, fungus would work in the show, which props to them for these celebrity cameos for these things. Because the woman is actually a famous Malaysian or Indonesian actor. I made a mistake again, the actress. So having it kind of give us the origin story of the virus, because we never really truly got that in the game. So it's an important change. I'm glad we got that. So new expanded backstory and development, like I said at the beginning. And then also how, kind of reminds me of the movie Contagion, where the scientists and the military are talking, and the scientist is like, just bomb this place. The virus is going to spread. We're all going to die. And essentially that's what she says. And it's kind of reminds me a bit of that, where like the scientists and the military kind of disagree on the tactic to take. And then, like I said, we continue in basically, once again, like what happened in the game, Tess gets infected from the clickers, which, by the way, clicker makeup is incredible. I thought some of that was CG, it may have been, but I saw the behind the scenes of them making the clicker faces, and it was awesome. And just like the makeup as a whole in this show is really good. Like I buy, like, it, what I can imagine what we see in the game, it being real, it is so incredible. So, like, so much about this show I'm praising. And sadly, again, Tess dies, but they change it a little bit, and we get a little bit more of a hint of the backstory with her and Joel than we actually got in the game. But again, also, what they do keep, I'm glad they keep. What they change, I'm glad they change to make it better, which leads us to episode 3. Now, just going to go ahead and say this right out of the way. I am not gay, but I don't have an issue, like I said, with the character in a show or movie being gay, because, again, I took a course in college. I took a gender studies course. Yes, it's a real course. About 1 in 15 people in the United States are in the LGBT plus community. So, I was wondering going in, especially when they got Nick Offerman as the character to play Bill in the game, I was like, oh, I wonder where they're going to go with this. And I even saw an interview with Neil Druckmann, the guy who made the game, saying there are some things we're going to change. So I was interested in going in, what are they going to change with that? Because I really liked the level in the game. So the fact they make it a little bit more, I guess, like a, not necessarily slower episode, but not as action-packed episode, just focuses solely on Bill and Frank and their development, which we didn't get that in the game. It was hinted that Frank wanted to leave Bill, but then he died from the infection. And here we actually get to see a little bit of that, but not to the same degree, them choosing to be on their own. Then we get a little bit more of a flashback with the two of them and with Joel and Tess, having to see Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation, which not a big fan of the show, but from what little I did see of it, I was a big fan. Like, Nick Offerman is my favorite character, or favorite actor from the show. So we get to see more kind of a love story in a zombie apocalypse, handled very well. And some people complaining that, oh, well, there weren't enough zombies, or there weren't enough, like, killing in it. I mean, Walking Dead had plenty of episodes, again, tying back to that comparison, where it was just a few of the characters, not very many zombie or human kills. It was just, like, the development of the characters. So I just feel like it was kind of just similar to that, which our episodes I actually like, where it actually focuses just on a few characters just trying to survive. It doesn't have to always be a shoot 'em up, kill zombie, kill human story, because that kind of gets old. Even in the game, there were points where it was just the characters talking, or just two characters just like on the journey, just Joel and Ellie just talking to each other, which I'll get back to that more in a minute. But I just feel like same thing here. It's just focusing on this one story of these two guys just trying to survive in the world, which ties back to something else I wanted to bring up. Originally in the game, the apocalypse began in 2013. Here they changed it to 2003, which I actually thought was a pretty interesting detail that someone pointed out, but then I did some more research on it. In the United States, in 2003, obviously George W. Bush was president. We also saw in episode 1 when Sarah was in school, because it took place in Texas. We saw a picture of George Bush. But also in 2003, the world was way different than it is now in 2023. Main thing was, gay marriage wasn't legal yet. I think Massachusetts was about to legalize it, or maybe it wasn't until 2004. So that was also probably a reason why Bill and Frank, slight change of the story, lived on their own, because they didn't want to go to a government-controlled safe zone where they could be discriminated against for being gay. But it's not just that. This is also another one of the elements of changing the show. Also changes from the game to the show, drastically changes the story. Because keep in mind, 2003, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have Facebook or YouTube, we didn't have one of my personal favorite shows, Breaking Bad, didn't come out in 2008. The Iraq War hadn't really gone underway yet, because again, it's summer or early fall of 2003. Obama wasn't even in the U.S. Senate yet. Trump, I think, was still hosting The Apprentice. The MCU wouldn't be around yet. Rihanna, who's hosting she's the musical halftime performance of the Super Bowl this year. Her career basically didn't really come around yet. I'm a huge Rihanna fan. And probably most relevant because it's HBO's The Last of Us. Game of Thrones, which I only saw the first season, but Game of Thrones wouldn't be on the air for another few years. So all these things would not be around yet in 2003. So this ties back into the fourth episode, which was another major change they made. In the game, they go to Pittsburgh. But because the show was filmed in Canada, the city they filmed it in doesn't look like Pittsburgh, so they changed it to Kansas City, which again, another change I don't mind. But another thing was, because it was 2003, Tommy, they change his character where he is a veteran of Desert Storm, which I thought was actually pretty cool. That was one of my biggest complaints after playing the first game so many times. I wish we would have gotten more with Tommy than we actually did. So here, sure, it's mostly just Joel explaining it to Ellie, but, which again, an element I don't mind, just two characters just talking if done well. He explains the relationship with his brother, but also a major change, Tommy being in Desert Storm veteran, which could come back to play later, because we only haven't seen him since the first episode, but it could be something that affects his character as well, which I'm excited to see where they go from here. But also another change they made, in the game, in the Pittsburgh level, two of the characters, Henry and Sam, are also outsiders. They get stuck inside the city, being hunted by the people who overtook the Federal soldiers and are now in control of the city. But now it's hinted that, oh no, they lived in Kansas City, but I guess there's something that's going to come up. I don't know yet. It seems like the fourth episode was a little bit shorter than the first three, and maybe it's going to be like a two-parter the next episode. Don't know yet. But I'm just saying, I feel like, again, another change they made, which I'm interested in. We actually have like a person that, I forgot her name, the woman who's in charge of the people in Kansas City. And another trivia note, the guy who portrayed Tommy in the game is portraying Perry, who's like the right-hand man to, it's funny, I remember his name, I don't remember the woman's name, of the people in charge of Kansas City. And then, one last thing I wanted to say, one of the scenes from the game that, for me, I both really love, and not necessarily hate, but struggled with the first time I played it, was the opening to the Pittsburgh level. Because the first half of the Pittsburgh level, and well, maybe first third and the second third, is like non-stop fighting human after human after human. You don't actually fight that many zombies in the Pittsburgh level. So I feel like they gave us just enough action in the first little bit of the fourth episode, where they're fighting just 3 guys instead of like dozens of guys here in Kansas City. And then you have the scene, which in the game, Ellie kills her first guy that we at least see on screen, not counting Left Behind, when he's trying to drown Joel. But here, Ellie, I think, takes the first shot, wounds him, and then Joel finishes him off with a knife or machete instead of using a gun to self-save the ammunition, which I think is something they also kind of made fun of in the third game. Hold on to the gun, or the third episode. Ellie goes, hold on to the gun. No, it's no good. It doesn't have a lot of ammo, so I'm just not going to take it with me. Because, you know, in the zombie apocalypse, it's hard to find ammo just laying around. But yeah, so they make... This ties back to the overall point. That I love the Last of Us game, and I love the Last of Us show, at least so far, only 4 episodes in. As a standalone show, it is amazing. But as an adaptation from the game, it's amazing. But they changed just enough to where it doesn't just feel copy and paste from the game to the show. And I am looking forward to see, I think I heard someone say there's going to be either 9 or 10 episodes the first season, and there's a good chance we're going to get a second season. So I'm interested to see how much more of the first game they're going to go into the first season, or is the entire first season just going to be just the first game? Don't know yet. But so far, I am loving this show. And it's, as I said at the beginning, probably, at least from what I've seen, because I've obviously not seen every adaptation ever, but I feel like it's one of, if not the best, at least game-to-show adaptations ever, but just in general, an adaptation that I've ever seen. And like I said, this is just kind of me rambling. Didn't really have much plan going in, but these are just my thoughts on the show. Looking forward to the rest of the show. And I'm in the middle of playing another, and just one more thing I want to bring up real quick. Right now I'm in the middle of playing Dying Light, because I actually replayed The Last of Us last year. So I am hoping that someday, maybe that will be another potentially good, I guess, video game to show adaptation that can be made, because I feel like that's another one that has a lot of potential. And maybe this is something that HBO is considering now, because they spent a good, like I said, I only watched first season, but it was like 7-8 seasons on Game of Thrones. I heard the last 2 weren't that good. So maybe HBO should consider other book or video game adaptations to make into shows. And I just feel like, from what we've gotten so far, The Last of Us, the HBO show, stands on its own very well. And I hope it continues to ride this route it's going so far, because so far it's a really great start, and I can't wait to see where they go from here. So that's all I got to say for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you comment, hopefully I can get back with you in the near future. And yeah, have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to episode 5 later this week. Oh, and also Rihanna, I hope she does a great job at the Super Bowl. Go Kansas, go the Kansas City. That's the team I'm backing for the Super Bowl. All right, take care.